Now, Gary Johnson is the Libertarian Party candidate running for president, and he was on Morning Joe talking about foreign policy when he was asked this question. It's a very important question about foreign policy, about Syria. Let's take a look.
What would you do if you were elected about Aleppo?
About
Aleppo.
And what is Aleppo?
You're kidding.
No.
Aleppo is in Syria. It's the epicenter of the refugee crisis.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Well, with regard to Syria, I do think that it's a mess. I think that the only way that we deal with Syria is to join hands with Russia to diplomatically bring that at an end. But when we've aligned ourselves with, when we've supported the opposition, the Free Syrian Army is also coupled with the Islamists, and then the fact that we're also supporting the Kurds, and it's just a mess.
What is Aleppo? Dude, you're not on Jeopardy. That's not what you okay, so look, that was bad. That was a gaffe, okay? And it certainly didn't make him look good. But his answer afterwards, and even though I don't agree with it, is at least more coherent than anything you would get out of Donald Trump. So that's why I'm going to kind of defend him against the media, even though I disagree with his answer, and I thought this gaffe was looked kind of bad. Now, the media blew this up as soon as they, oh my God, Gary Johnson doesn't know what Aleppo is. Doesn't know anything. He sucks at foreign policy. What a joke. What a joke. In fact, the New York Times wrote an article about Gary Johnson, and I want to read some of that for you. They write, Gary Johnson, the former New Mexico governor and Libertarian presidential nominee, revealed a surprising lack of foreign policy knowledge on Thursday that could rock his insurgent candidacy when he could not answer a basic question about the crisis in Aleppo, Syria. Now, it's going to quote him here. He says, what is Aleppo? Mr. Johnson said when MSNBC, when asked on MSNBC how as president, he would address the refugee crisis in the Syrian city that is, and they write, the de facto capital of the Islamic State. Aleppo, the de facto capital of the Islamic State. Is that true? No. Actually, you're talking about Raqqa. Yes. Raqqa. Oops. Well, look, that's okay, right? Some people make mistakes, right? That's a gaffe too. So the New York Times actually then corrected that by writing this. As what is Aleppo? Mr. Johnson said when asked on MSNBC how as president he would address the refugee crisis in the Syrian city that is a stronghold of the Islamic State. Is that correct? No. You're 0 for 2, dude. 0 for 2. Aleppo is not an Islamic State stronghold. In fact, the Islamic State is not in Aleppo. They're in Raqqa. And they're also in Iraq. Okay? No, Aleppo is actually where the Syrian government is clashing with anti-government forces. Now, some of those forces could be related to radical Islamists, right? We don't actually know. See, that was one of the reasons that there were a lot of people that were criticizing John McCain for saying, hey, let's arm the Syrian rebels. Well, who are the Syrian rebels? We don't know. We don't know. Are they ISIS or are they not ISIS? We don't know. Okay? They're not officially, they're not saying they're officially with ISIS. Maybe they are Islamists. Maybe they're not. Maybe the Free Syrian Army are just anti-Assad rebels. It's a very complicated situation, right? Very complicated. So the New York Times had to go in and fix that again to war-torn Syrian city. Fair enough. Wow. And look, if you want to know what the capital of Syria is, it is Damascus, by the way. Aleppo, Look, Aleppo is a big city, and that's where a lot of the refugees have been fleeing from because of all the attacks that have been going on by pro-Assad forces. So now, why am I kind of telling you this, right? What's the whole point? Well, because I want to point out how the media is against Gary Johnson and Jill Stein because the media favors the establishment. And so they'll blow up a gaffe to make them look completely stupid. Now, this gaffe is stupid. No doubt, it's a head slapper, okay? But it's nowhere near as bad as Donald Trump. Especially when you consider that he had a town hall last night, a forum, where he said absolutely nothing of substance. Zero policy substance whatsoever. And this guy is considered a legitimate candidate of a major party. Amazing, right? Whereas Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, well, when you ask the media about them, they're considered complete cranks. Oh, those crazy people, those crazy libertarians, which, look, I don't agree with libertarians on like half the issues. I think some of their economic stuff is fanciful bullshit. That's like an Ayn Rand novel come to life. But there are other issues where you can actually have a good conversation with, libertarians. In fact, I've got a lot of libertarian friends. We have good discussions on at least the problems that are wrong. Okay, and some of their policies on social issues are actually pretty good and align with progressives. So, nonetheless, the media likes to treat them both, Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, who, look, might be a little too far left for some people, and I understand that, right, on some of her policy positions. And, some of them might not be as workable as you might think. That might have unintended consequences, but I'm not really getting into the policy positions at this point. What I'm saying is that the media ignores all that and basically says, you guys are crazy, you're loons, both of you. If you're not part of the establishment, if you're not part of the two-party duopoly, you're insane. And you're just cranks. Now, here's another person they treated as a crank. Bernie Sanders. Remember, they called him a wild-eyed leftist who's got no idea what he's talking about. Except when 45% of the country said, you know what? I'm going to vote for that guy. Because that guy is better than what we have. And he actually has ideas that we want. So the media, as I said, they are establishment biased. And like it or not, Donald Trump is now considered, in some certain circles anyway, as part of that, as a legitimate candidate by the establishment, which is a whole nother conversation. But as I said, they don't treat anybody they treat anybody who isn't part of this establishment like they're crazy. You remember how they treated Martin O'Malley? They treated him like he was an idiot when he said the Syrian conflict was actually partly a result of climate change. In fact, he said during the primary, one of the things that preceded the failure of the nation-state of Syria and the rise of ISIS was the effect of climate change and the mega drought that affected that region, wiped out farmers, drove people to cities, and created a humanitarian crisis. Corporate media responded with, oh, come on, Martin. Come on, Martin. Climate change? Really, Martin? Really? Look at this crazy fringe liberal talking about climate change. And no. It's got nothing to do with climate change. You know why there's civil war in Syria? Because they're all violent Muslims. And they're terrorists. And they hate us because they hate us. No. That's not it at all. In fact, he was right. Martin O'Malley was right. PolitiFact rated his statement mostly true. But because the media would rather have us be at war and to do military solutions to everything, for example, a no-fly zone over Syria, which would put us in conflict with the Russians, and by the way, that's Hillary Clinton's position, instead of deal with the refugee crisis and as well as climate change, well, they'd rather have us go to war instead of doing those. Now, Gary Johnson, who's a libertarian, he doesn't want to bomb Syria. Unlike the establishment, unlike the Democratic and Republican parties who love going to war. He doesn't want to bomb Syria. He doesn't want to arm the rebels. Doesn't want to set up a no-fly zone in the area. And that flies in the face of what corporate media actually wants. Because they want to push conflict. Because that ends up making them money. And to be honest, look, listening to this answer, I'm only defending him against the media. I'm not actually defending what he says because I didn't agree with his answer. He says, let's work with the Russians to find a way to solve this diplomatically. How? Putin is backing Assad, the guy who just allegedly dropped chlorine bombs in the city, according to a recent report, who may be guilty of war crimes. Assad. That's the guy Putin is backing. Not to mention, Putin, not exactly the best guy. So, no. I don't agree with his answer, right? I don't agree with his answer. And yet, I feel like the media, or I'm sorry, I feel like no one has a good answer for this. And the media fails to point that out. That nobody really has that good of an answer on how to help Syria. On how to, stop that conflict that has been raging in Syria for years. Nobody's got that answer. But what I'm trying to say, my whole point of this is, look, if you're going to trash Gary Johnson for this gaffe, right, at least point out the problems with Hillary Clinton's no-fly zone, for example, and other hawkish policy positions that she has, as well as Donald Trump's I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing strategy. Let's be a little bit more fair. Let's be a bit more objective instead of destroying a candidate who, look, has some not great positions that I don't agree with. But let's be fair. That's all I'm trying to say. That's all I'm asking.